You're listening to Retro Reels, a show that looks back on films from time gone by and recalls the various events, trends, and perspectives that informed their creation. I'm your host, Hanna, here to guide you through a trip to the past via the silver screen. Tsai Ming Liang's movie Vive L'Amour is a portrait of three people drifting through a cold and uncaring Taipei of the early 90s, too young and beautiful to be saddled with such ennui, but such is life, or rather, c'est la vie, I guess I should say. The film follows three individuals: real estate agent Lin, ossuary salesman Xiao Kang, no relation to the previous movie's Xiao Kang, and Zong, who hawks clothing in the streets. When Lin accidentally forgets the key to a nice apartment somewhere in Da'an district that she's trying to sell, Xiao Kang snatches it from the keyhole, returning to the apartment later to secretly live in one of the bedrooms and enjoy baths in the large tub. Zong comes across Lin in a food court, where they share a furtive glance. When she leaves, he follows her, never saying anything outright, but wandering just close enough to her that she eventually picks up on his presence and starts to play along. She leads him back to the very same apartment, where they hook up in one of the bedrooms. Xiao Kang, who happens to be holed up there trying to slit his wrists at the moment, hears them and stops just short of finishing the job. Zong steals Lin's key to the apartment and secretly moves into the bedroom they hooked up in. On Xiao Kang's first night sleeping over at the apartment, he plays with a small watermelon, first practicing kissing on it, then bowling it down the hall, where it smashes apart against the wall. It just so happens Zong is there too, enjoying the large bathtub, and before long they both realize someone else is inhabiting the place. After a game of cat and mouse in the shadows of the apartment, Zong finally realizes where Xiao Kang is hiding and confronts him, asking him why he's there and how he got in. But since they're both essentially squatters who found themselves with access to the place via unscrupulous means, neither of them has the authority to kick the other out of the place. The camera cuts to Lin on a typical workday as she bustles around hanging up property ads and calling and meeting with potential buyers. At one point, she returns to the Da'an apartment to rest and ends up falling asleep in Zong's room, where he is hiding under the mattress. He and Xiao Kang both sneak out while she's there to avoid discovery and end up palling around town for a bit, getting to know one another. Xiao Kang explains what he does for a living, then has Zong take him to a columbarium, where they mosey around for a bit, listening to the salesman showing visiting guests the couples niches and family niches. Actually, I never knew the English word for these places until I noticed how it was translated in the English subtitles for this movie. Even though my agong and my ama's remains are both interred at the adjoining columbaria of two temples here in Taiwan, I had no idea what they were called until now. So just for your reference, a columbarium refers to a special room or structure containing compartments where you can store funerary urns. The ones I'm familiar with are basically like a little room that's filled with rows and rows of square cabinets, each one marked with the name of its occupant. And when you visit your loved one, you can pick up a little key that lets you open the cabinet and check on their urn. I just thought that was interesting. Back to the movie. The final scenes of the movie sees Xiao Kang come across Zong out in his spot on the streets selling dresses one night, and Lin happens to walk by. Although she doesn't notice them, Zong recognizes her and follows her to a food stand, where they play the same little game of follow me home, back to the apartment, and sleep together again. Only this time, Xiao Kang is secretly hiding under the mattress, listening to them do the deed. After Lin gets dressed and leaves the next morning, Xiao Kang emerges from his hiding spot and secretly kisses Zong while he's still asleep. When Lin's car won't start, she starts strolling through the unfinished Da'an Forest Park, sits on a bench in what looks like the amphitheater area, and has a good long cry.
心有气。 是舞夜青，安怎心肝遐呢个无情无义来翻飞，着阮沦落社会，做我叫你陪。关景逼阮，大日黑暗路，自分风间都不明，目屎像落雨。挽回阮当初来对路，才着受痛苦，跳出黑暗的江湖，不愿当误好前途，暗分受气怨这苦，行着光明路。
Technically, there's something voyeuristic about viewing any film. We are watching it, after all. But with Vive L'Amour especially, you really feel like a creep. Although very little dialogue is actually spoken in the movie, so little of their lives is hidden from view that you end up with more revealing portraits of these three people than you would have if they talked to you about themselves directly. The camera follows them and the way they interact so closely, and it's not only that you witness all their most vulnerable moments, including baths, sexual encounters, cross-dressing, self-gratification, and self-harm, all the things normally only done behind closed doors, but you also see them doing totally ordinary humdrum things, like swatting mosquitoes, or making phone calls, or doing some shopping, or just going about a regular workday. You get a complete picture, not just the titillating stuff, but the boring stuff too. And speaking of titillating, one thing that stuck out to me about this movie was the way the men are so sexualized by the camera. There is this brazenly intimate scene of Lin and Ah-jung's first time sleeping together where the camera lingers on Ah-jung's bare chest and Lin passionately kissing and sucking his nipple for at least a few minutes. I've never seen anything like that in depictions of sex in other movies. And each time, Lin appears to take charge. She seems terribly hungry for the opportunity to be close to someone. It's a pretty stark reversal from the way sex between men and women is normally shown on screen, where usually the focus is on the woman's body and her beauty. In this movie, much more male nudity and sensuality is depicted versus female, which is something I noticed in Rebels of the Neon God too. Then again, Tsai is gay, so rather than deliberately subverting expectations, he may honestly just be shooting what he most likes to see. Another thing Vive L'Amour has in common with Rebels of the Neon God is this odd sense of homelessness, or rather the sense that your home isn't really your home, or that you don't feel at home there. Presumably, both Xiaokang and Ah-jung each must have had some place they were living before they started spending nights at the Da'an apartment, but you never see them go back to their real homes, so you have no idea what their legal living conditions are like. You can only assume the for sale place is probably a major upgrade. Most of the residential buildings you do see in the movie are uninhabited and mostly empty, up for sale via Lin's company. The sole exception is one scene that takes you back to her place, where she appears to live alone, and looks pretty unhappy about it. Although you see them navigate crowds from time to time, the movie is so focused on these three people that for the most part, it seems like nobody else even lives in Taipei besides them. And I think that's probably the point. While the plot sounds a little bit like a comedy of errors, and it's not without some subtle humor, it's a pretty desolate movie, a silent look at how you never feel lonelier than when you're surrounded by people.
不要再想你，不要再爱你，让时间悄悄地飞逝，抹去我俩的回忆。对于你的名字，从今不会再提起，不再让悲伤将我心占据，让它随风去。让它无痕迹，所有快乐悲伤，所有过去统统都抛去，心中想的念的盼的望的不会再是你，不愿再承受，要把你忘记。我会擦去我不小心滴下的泪水，随风去，让它无痕迹，所有快乐悲伤，所有过去统统都抛去，心中想的念的盼的望的不会再是你，不愿再承受，要把你忘记。
I got so carried away doing Freudian analyses during my last episode that I didn't really have the time to delve more into the unique relationship between Tsai and Li Kangsen. It would seem natural to assume that they're a couple, given Tsai is gay, but Li isn't gay. He's just the wayward teenager to Tsai's role as a kind of stand-in parent, according to the way they themselves have described their relationship. I think it's fair to say that Li primarily serves as Tsai's muse, and at least in the two movies I've watched, as his alter ego. Compared to the Xiao Kang of Rebels of the Neon God, who to me was more confused youth than closeted gay man, the Xiao Kang of Vive L'Amour clearly has some repressed homosexual desire. I appreciate it when a director knows to cast someone younger and more attractive than he is to play a character who's based on himself, rather than repeatedly subject his audience to his own face all the time. Are you listening, Woody Allen? Nobody wants to see you on screen. Nobody. Although Li Kangsen will forever be Tsai's main muse, he is one of those directors who likes to work with the same people over and over again, so Li isn't the only actor you end up becoming familiar with as you work through his filmography. This is my second time now seeing Aaron Chen, having watched him in Rebels of the Neon God as the swaggering Atze. And again, we find him in a role that plays as a foil to Li's character. They contrast well because while Li is not unattractive by any means, he has a more unconventional and inscrutable face, while Chen has a more traditionally handsome face that telegraphs his emotions normally. He seems more in touch with the world in a way that Li is not, like he's actually a resident of this planet, whereas Li always looks like he just came in from outer space. This is my first time, however, seeing Yang Guimei, who I found eminently watchable. You can really see whether an actor or actress is worth their salt by not giving them many lines to say and just training the camera on them for several minutes without cutting away. It takes a lot of finesse to be able to act with your face alone and for a sustained period of time. It seems like Lee's trick is to just be as understated as possible, move really slowly, and maintain mostly the same look on his face. But Yang is a lot more expressive, without ever verging on too animated. She can talk with a look, and while I'm no actor, I'm aware that's not an easy thing to do. Also, remember last week when I said I couldn't see the resemblance between James Dean and Lee Kang-seung, but that it wasn't because they were different races? Well, I swear from certain angles Yang Gui-mei looks kind of like Renee Zellweger. Anyway, in the final scene of the movie, when Yang's character is walking through Da'an Forest Park, it took me a few minutes to recognize what I was looking at, because it's just a big field of dirt with sidewalks crisscrossing it. I actually had no idea about the history of the park until I looked it up, and it turns out that at the time, in the year 1994, when this movie was filmed, it had only just opened to the public, and still in a largely unfinished state. The bathrooms weren't even ready to use yet. While it is now the largest expanse of greenery in the downtown area, the site of many teenage makeout sessions and Tai Chi meetups, and one of the prettiest places to go on a nice weekend when you feel like being annoyed by a rogue musician, it used to be called Mud Park, for how incomplete it was at the time of its grand opening on March 29th that year. It doesn't look at all like the natural oasis it is now. In fact, it looks pretty bleak, pretty depressing. It looks like a suitable place for a bit of an emotional breakdown. There's been a trend in recent years for fans of the movie to gather at Da'an Park at midnight on New Year's Eve and reenact Yang's crying scene as a way of ringing in the new year. Last December, the Taiwan Film and Audiovisual Institute organized the event, screening the movie such that the crying scene would coincide with the year-end countdown. Tsai, Yang, and Lee attended as well. It's a real shame I couldn't go, but I had a 2-month-old to deal with at the time, so what are you gonna do? This is just gonna be the year of missing out for me, and I've accepted that. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Hanna Belinsky. Thank you for tuning in to Retro Reels, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another look back on the way things were.